Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. We have a great person that is doing what we've always talked about in Texas, and that is we contest every single district. We take and we put competent people in every single district, and we take them over. We do what is right for Texas. We do what's right for Texans, and that's what we have. We have, first of all, candidate Dan Wood, Democrat of Texas 05. That is District 5. Is going to turn another district blue. Texas Democratic Congressional District 5 candidate Dan Wood joins us to discuss turning his district blue with progressive ideas they need. In a country in turmoil, it is essential that we start electing people who have the interests of their constituents as a priority. For too long, many politicians have forgotten that the 2018 midterm election will determine a lot. It will tell us if Americans have had enough. I think we have. Throughout the country, virtually all congressional districts are challenged. We are ready for a materializing blue wave, but we need to move from materializing now to materialized on November 6th. Today, we are honored to have Dan Wood with us. Who is Dan Wood? Dan Wood is running for the U.S. House of Representatives from Texas' 5th Congressional District. This campaign is one of many around the country challenging the Trump administration's efforts to undermine our democracy. A vote for Dan Wood is a vote for change. Wood believe in the underdog. Wall Street banks and billionaires have too much power in our political system. Oppression of any class of people is just wrong. Healthcare is a right and not a privilege. It's every woman's right to control her own body. Wood said he will champion the rights of working people. He said America must set the example for human rights around the world. He's a small business owner, practicing law for 30 years as a criminal defense attorney, protecting and defending citizens' constitutional rights in the trial and appellate courts. Helping people is in his nature, and he will take it to Washington. So Wood is a 74 he's a graduate of Terrell High School, 1974. But he's an Aggie, but it's okay. He's Texas A&M Former Student. Baylor University Law grad, 86, and a former Terrell City Councilman and Mayor Pro Tem, and a proud 2012 Democratic nominee for Justice on Texas 5th District Court of Appeals. My friend, Texan Dan Wood, how are you doing today?
Oh, great, Egberto. Thanks for having me.
Look, we would have it no other way. Beforehand, I just gave a small synopsis of who you are. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and also why did you decide to run in that specific district, which we know it's a difficult district?
Well, it's my home district. I've lived here for 60 years. When I woke up on the morning after the election in 2016, I thought we've got to do something. And one of those things was to contest every seat. In my district, Jeb Hensarling had not had an opponent since 2012. And so I decided I would take that on if I was the person who needed to do that. And sure enough, got a lot of support, decided to put my name on the ballot, and I was after Mr. Hensarling daily about his anti-consumer stance as chairman of the Financial Services Committee. So, at some point he decided he didn't want to run and announced his retirement. So now it's an open seat.
Now, let me tell you, first of all, a lot of folks don't understand how districting work here in Texas. So why don't you, and actually it's the same across the whole entire country with the gerrymandering. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the districts and what counties, how the county structure set up and what they did to kind of make that district the way it is today?
Right. Well, Hensarling lived in Dallas County, but Dallas County is known as a Democratic or blue county. In order to dilute that, the district had to be drawn to include 6 counties to the east of Dallas, which is a largely red area. I live in Kaufman County, my home county, and it was an effort to just keep this district from voting Democratic. And so I think we've got some surprises in store, though, this year.
Tell me why you think there are some surprises.
Well, we've identified the Democrats that need to get out and vote in this race to win. The Democrats are here from East Dallas County all the way down to Jacksonville and Palestine in Far East Texas. There's plenty of Democrats who can get out and vote and win this seat back. It's just a matter of turning out, and our whole focus now is making sure people get out and vote.
Now, when you say you're trying to make sure people get out and vote, what specifically are you doing right now to kind of, out here in Houston, we have a strong get out to vote movement going on here. Tell me a little bit about how your get out the vote movement is going.
Well, our ground game is to take people to the polls during the 2 weeks of early voting. We are organizing drivers and volunteers to put together what we call a Roll to the Polls program. We call our drivers the roly-polies. We have T-shirts for our volunteers and special awards for people that step up and want to be volunteers for us. But we intend to take many people to the polls during that 2-week period of early voting. Literally, we are setting up locations all across the district to pick up voters. We are targeting the Hispanic areas. We have fruterias and mercados where we set up banners saying that we will take you to the polls from this location. And we're doing that all over the district, not just minority districts, but all over Dallas County especially, working with the groups that are on the ground there to get the vote out.
Now, tell me a little bit about there's a specific reason that you ran. There is something that was a trigger. What do you consider your trigger? And then we'll go into platforms and that stuff a little bit later.
Well, sure. I was disappointed in the ACA in our county. In our county, we have one insurance company that provides insurance under the ACA, also known as Obamacare. And so my wife has a pre-existing condition. And since her employer does not provide insurance, her only option was to buy that one insurance policy that's offered in the healthcare market in our county. That insurance is an HMO, and when we attempted to have our normal doctors and healthcare providers set up an appointment for my wife, they tell us they don't take that insurance. We try to go to other healthcare providers, and so many have said they don't accept that insurance. So having access to health insurance under the ACA is not the same thing as having access to health care. And so that's why I believe we need to move on to a universal health care system. Well, there needs to be a affordable health care for all. Now, whether that takes the form of a Medicare for all or Medicare for everyone or buying into Medicare, I'm willing to work on those details to see what we can best provide. I know that immediately we need to shore up the ACA, create a public option in the healthcare markets. The Obamacare plan was the most conservative plan that could have been passed to try to provide health care to all. It's time to move past that, though.
Now, when you said there's a particular issue here in Texas, and that is what we've noticed is we gave up the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act. Right. Now, what are you going to do to go ahead and make sure that we get that?
Well, unfortunately, our legislature is controlled by Republicans. Our governorship is controlled by Republicans. Anything with President Obama's name on it was a deal breaker for the Republicans. Not that it was bad policy, but that they just were going to refuse to accept the Medicaid expansion out of spite, which has cost many people in Texas poor health and even people who have faced death probably before they needed to, if they had access, if they had access to affordable health care.
Absolutely. So now let me ask you, as far as in your platform, you mentioned about women's health and so forth. Tell me a little bit more about exactly what you intend to do about that.
That specifically is directed toward the idea that a woman has a right to determine her own reproductive health, access to reproductive health care, including abortion if a woman so chooses. That is something that's currently the law of the land. I support Roe versus Wade. As you know, the first two trimesters are what Roe versus Wade focuses on. And I support the fact that we need to continue to have justices on the Supreme Court who understand that that is a right found within the Constitution and should be supported.
Now, tell me what you think are your chances, your real chances of winning that race.
My real chances of winning this race are great, because we're going to have that blue wave. I hesitate to say blue wave because I don't want to create any complacency, right, because everybody has to turn out. But the votes are here. There are more than enough votes to win this district in such a way, by such a great extent, that the Republicans will be afraid to run anybody from now on. As you've heard, Texas is not a red state, it's just a non-voting state. And so we're doing everything we can to convince people that this is their first shot at riding the ship that is sinking, the ship of democracy, because since 2016, it's been evident that there are powers at play who are not interested in us here in the 5th District, and who are interested in making a buck off of you and me, to the extent that our freedoms and democracy don't matter. And so November 16th is our first time that we have a chance to fight back, and that's what we're pulling for.
November 6th. Let's just make sure to have them. November 6th is the date.
Right.
Now, criminal justice has been a big issue right now in this country, specifically the way not only within the criminal justice system, but within police officers and people of color. What's your stance on that, and how do you intend to help mitigate that issue?
Well, I absolutely believe that Black Lives Matter is a relevant and worthy cause that we need to pay attention to, because people in minority districts, especially African Americans, have suffered at the hands of police shootings, to the extent that we all recognize that there's a problem. The idea that we have a president who tells people that they cannot protest, players at football games, because of this issue, is just a leader that is blind to the needs of our community, especially minority communities. And so we definitely need to consider the fact that criminal justice reform is important, but we also need to focus on additional training for police officers and make sure that everyone's rights are respected.
Now, do you know what the age breakdown is in your district?
As far as age breakdown, probably half the people in my district are older than 40, I would imagine. I haven't looked at the stats recently, but there is an older population in the eastern part of the county, but those folks, and a lot of them voted against what I think is their own interest by supporting Trump. But I think a lot of people have seen the light. I think a lot of people are not going to support the Trump agenda, such as my opponent supports. So I expect that there'll be some reduction in the number of people that supported the Trump agenda, but at the same time, a gigantic increase in the amount of Democratic vote.
Now, interesting enough, I think, there's a certain cultural thing with Donald Trump as far as the people who vote for him. I wonder, and this is a question as far as how your campaign, and I think one of the dangers of Donald Trump is that he doesn't really tell folks what he says one thing and he does the other. Well, people expect that of politicians, understood. Mm-hmm. But in his case, it is rather severe. Are you making your constituents know, your potential constituents know, that because of the tax cut scam that they passed, that didn't help most people?
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. Four,
sorry
3,
about that. That's a telephone
2,
system.
1.
Okay.
Have you told them specifically?
Blog Talk Radio.
Have you told them go ahead.
I do speak specifically about the tax cuts and how they were designed to benefit the wealthy and corporations in this country. I speak about it often. I feel passionately about it. It's just a money grab, which results in having to take programs away from ordinary citizens that we need in this country, like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. The whole idea that in a booming economy, we know from past experience that tax cuts are not necessary for a booming economy such as we have, which began under Obama, by the way. But what I find absurd about the tax cut is that we,
Mm-hmm. What do you find about the tax cut? Yeah.
We knew that the money would not be used to benefit workers. We knew it wouldn't be used to raise wages. We knew that the money would be used for stock buybacks, stock dividends, CEO pay, and things of that nature, not benefits for the working people. So that's why I call for an increase in the federal minimum wage, because we do have to start working on that inequity between the working class and those that have money. So I feel like one of the absurdities, I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself, but
oh no, go ahead, please. I mean, I think people.
One of the things that I notice is that our debt, our national debt, is rising. We have to have deficit spending to pay for our tax cut.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about the fact that the Chinese are one of the largest buyers of U.S. debt, U.S. treasuries, in a sense, we are borrowing money from the Chinese to give money to the wealthy in this country that the working people are going to have to pay back. That's just absurd in my mind that people think that is the way to move forward in this country.
Let me ask you the whole one time. It seems like we have, there's a caller coming in from area code 21. Oh, I guess the person left. Okay, here's the next thing that I want to ask you, because this is really important. You made an important point that we gave a tax cut. To pay for that tax cut, we borrow money, and then we ask those people. We borrow money from the Chinese, and we borrow money from the wealthy people who we've just given the tax cut to, and the people who end up paying that in a large part. I don't know if you realize that, but about a third. Pretty soon, a third of the budget alone is going to be payment on the interest on the loans that we've had over time. Now. Are we making sure that Americans know, your constituents know, that this scheme, the intent of this scheme, is to take away their social safety net? In other words, the excuse that's going to be used why they're going to have to cut Social Security, why they're going to have to cut Medicare is because of the budget deficits, but then the budget deficits were created by the tax cut scam. Are we making that clear to our constituents?
Certainly to my constituents, I've tried to make that clear. It's been obvious for years that the Republicans think that cutting Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid is the way to go. They like to refer to them as entitlements. I refer to them as benefits, especially Social Security that people have paid into for decades. This is a further excuse on the part of the Republican Party to throw up their hands and say, oh, well, we don't have the money now to afford the social safety net. So it's hypocrisy. The fact that the Republicans are right now considering an additional tax cut bill in the Congress, and if they pass that bill, the next step will be to cut all of our Social Security benefits. So it's right there.
The sad thing about that bill is that that even worse so than the tax cut scam, that bill is really a tax giveaway to the wealthy, because what it's starting to do is index stock. It's amazing. Index stock gains to inflation. I cannot believe it.
Yeah. And Republicans don't support COLA for Social Security, but they want to protect their wealthy constituents.
That is so sad. Well, before we go into some other questions, how's your campaigning going? As far as how's your fundraising? What's your method of fundraising for your campaign?
Well, we have a Grassroots campaign fundraising strategy. I said early on I was not accepting PAC money. I think I may have said that before Beto O'Rourke did. The people in my district are not wealthy people. They don't get up every day looking to make another $1 million. These are folks that get up every day looking to make a living. And so I had a small group of Democrats that met in my office back in March of 2017. And I told that group that if they would raise $5,000, I would put my name on the ballot against Jeb Henshaw. And in 19 days, those folks, working people, raised that $5,000. So that told me a great interest in having a Democrat run in this district. And so we've certainly raised quite a bit more than that, but it's all been small donations, largely. And I've even had to put a little of my own money into the race, which I don't mind doing because I intend to win, and I believe in what we're doing.
Now, your district is fairly big. Do you have a whole lot of block walkers in all the different areas within the several counties that you cover?
In the rural areas, it's not easy to block walk. Voters are very dispersed geographically. Even in some of the towns, it's hard to be able to put together what we call cutting the turf to do block walks.
Right.
But in the western part of my district, from my hometown of Terrell through Dallas, we have block walkers out on a regular basis. That same group that I talked about from March of 2017, I think they've been block walking in Kaufman County since that time.
Wow, that is great.
These people are fired up. And so, and then there's so many groups in East Dallas that we've coordinated with to also get the vote out in the densely populated areas of Dallas County. So, yes, we work constantly to make sure that we get those folks out.
Now, I know that you have a heavy, within the city limits, you have a heavy Latino, and I don't know what the black population is in that area. I imagine the rural areas are mostly white, or is that the case?
Yes, I would say 85% white.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you starting to, let's say, attend the churches where, in as much as it's a very dispersed area, that is where people sort of congregate and kind of get a foothold in there, whether they allow you in the church or maybe sitting outside of the church waiting for the pew to come out?
I have visited churches. I find that very gratifying. I've been welcomed everywhere I've gone. I intend to visit more churches. So yes, we've certainly tapped into that interest, and we have a Sunday of early voting in Texas this year, and we call that Souls to the Polls.
Yes.
So we intend to provide transportation for all those who want to vote on that Sunday as well.
Excellent, excellent. Now, as far as other forms of campaigning, are you doing the digital thing as well, or do you have somebody who understands the not only Facebook and Twitter, but how to throw you up on Tumblr and a few of the others?
I'm not sure about Tumblr, but I know that social media presence is good now. I was able to raise enough money to hire a political consultant out of Washington, D.C., who has really made our campaign vibrant. We're putting together some commercials we'll be able to put out on social media. Ruby, who you spoke to earlier as we were trying to set up this interview, she's very competent with social media, and I think that's the difference. I can't match my opponent. He takes money from any special interest that'll give him a check. But social media is certainly making a difference in our race.
Now, in your region, and I'm not sure, do you have a whole lot of oil wells that potentially spits out methane, or do you know?
There's a couple of small oil fields to the east of me in Van Zandt County, Henderson County. So yes, methane gas release is an issue, and you'll notice that there was a regulation rollback recently on small producers regarding the release of methane. I'm against that particular rollback of that regulation because greenhouse gases, of which methane is the number one culprit, has to be controlled. And of course, that gets us into the larger issue of climate change and the fact that our current administration withdrew us from the Paris Accords, which I oppose. So, I mean, yes, to go back to your original question, we do have some small oil fields in our district.
Yeah, you kind of preempted what I was about to ask you about, and that is, are you using that in the campaign as well as not? I mean, the methane is in fact damaging to the environment, but it also is damaging to the health of the people in the regions who are there inhaling that, which can cause a whole lot of other problems as well.
We talk about it some. It's not an issue that really resonates with the eastern part of my county. There are people who are able to make a living on royalty checks. There's school districts that are able to offer quality education because of oil production in their districts. So while I certainly understand the need for controlling emissions, especially methane and CO2, it's not something that's really been brought up as a big issue in my district.
Okay, so in other words, people don't see it as a real problem at this point.
It's not something that many constituents refer to. Most of the time they refer to the more global aspect of climate change.
Right. So then how do you make that an issue for them?
Well, it's education. We have to understand that we have these regulations for a reason. Regulations are not just created willy-nilly, but actually address a problem. And methane is that continuing problem. So, Egberto, I'd say that education, it's going to be an uphill battle, though.
Yeah, in fact, it is an uphill battle. But I mean, I think the good thing about it is there are so many other issues that you don't have. I mean, if you get there when you get there in Congress, you will be hitting up all these particular issues. And in as much as some of the issues are not very important to some of your constituents, you'll make them important when you're
right. I intend, unlike Congressman Hensarling, I intend to be present in my district all the time, available to constituents. Part of the thing that irritated me so much about our congressman is the lack of transparency that he supported in federal government. I think the lack of transparency is always a bad thing. And I would certainly support talking to the people of my district about these important issues.
Excellent, excellent. Tell me a little bit more about what else on your platform that I've missed.
Well, consumer protection is really important in our district. There are people who are poor that live in our district, what I call the working poor, who try to make a living on minimum wage, and of course that requires them to have more than one job. And these people don't have money for an emergency. They don't have $200 or $300 if something goes bad on their car, or something needs to be fixed on the house, or any other number of emergencies that might arise. And so they turn to title loan lenders and payday loan lenders, which are there to take advantage of the most vulnerable among us. And once people in my district get involved with these loan sharks, as I refer to them as, they're not going to be able to get out of debt. Those companies are literally sucking the cash out of the small communities of my district. And one of the things that, and there were several things, but one of the additional things that infuriated me about Jeb Henserling was his willingness to take money from the lobby of those payday lenders, and his willingness to support them in an important position he had as chair of the Financial Services Committee. So yes, consumer protection is a huge problem that needs to be addressed here.
Okay, let me ask you, Dan, to give me a closer for what you would like to tell your constituency when we put this out.
Well, we can win this district. It takes work, it takes dedication, it takes interest in voting, and we're certainly giving all the attention that we can to actually getting votes out in this election. I believe that it's time for us to right the ship of democracy. We need to send me and Beto and other congressional candidates in the state of Texas to Washington, D.C. as the tip of the spear to take back our democracy. We are under attack by foreign power that has actually got ties to the White House. And many of the people involved in the investigation of the Russia interference in 2016 have drawn many parallels and connections now with people who are running our administration. That needs to be rooted out. The rule of law must prevail, and we've got to send Democrats to Washington, D.C. to address that. But this is our government. This is not the oligarchs' government. It is not the government of the Russians. It is our government. And the way to make sure that it remains our government is to send Democrats to Washington, D.C. this fall.
Now, do you want to give an urge to vote and let folks know that Texas is, Texas is not a red state?
No, it's absolutely not a red state. As you've heard me say and others, that we're just a non-voting state. There was something like only 54% of the registered voters voted in the last presidential election. And Trump won the state of Texas in 2016, but it didn't have to be that way. There was a sense of complacency that got people to think they didn't have to go vote. I think they have decided that's not going to work. And to get out and vote is your civic duty. And not only that, but our duty to take back our country. And folks, we are actually going to lose our country if we don't do something.
Dan Wood, the next congressman from District 5 in Texas. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you, Egberto.
You have a wonderful day, sir.
Thank you.
That, folks, was Mr. Dan Wood from Texas, or I should say from Texas. Of course, from Texas. District 5. That's a district that is going to be fairly difficult to win, but a wave is going to bring it in. So don't you fear, folks. Texas looks just like a whole lot of districts throughout the country, and a lot of districts in Texas that people think are unwinnable or winnable. And I have a little secret for Republicans as well. They may think that they have this thing in the bag. They may think that they have voters that'll never leave them. I tell you what, they better get with the program, because as it turns out, as I see it, there are a lot of people who are going to go into the vote. One of the things that we tell people all of the times is we say, look, remember when you go into that voting booth, do remember one important thing, and that is that vote is between you and your God. Nobody else sees it. So you don't have to tell your friends who you vote for. You can vote your own interest without having to tell your friends who you voted for. And whenever you start thinking that way, it means that you know you have the wherewithal to go vote. We had some mic problems. I'm going to try to figure out what that is with the rendezvous with Wirecast, where we had a whole lot of echo from what a lot of folks have been telling me here. We have to get that taken care of once and for all. It is something with the application, I understand. Anyhow, folks, listen here. We have a blog of the week. It's not mine. It's one that was written by a person, and it has to do also with Texas being the type of state that it is. So without further ado, here we go.
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Okay, here it goes. The title of that blog post is "Progressive Texans Are Texans Enough?" It was written by a young lady that works with Indivisible Houston. Her name is Sarah Bronson, and here it goes. A lot of Texas lawmakers take for granted that the essential nature of Texas is conservative, she says, and they believed it so long the idea is fraying. Your conservative voters have been outnumbered progressives at all the polls in Texas for the past 2 to 3 decades, but the notion that progressives aren't authentic Texans goes too far. We don't believe it anymore when our elected officials bring up tiring as hell tropes about coastals and barbecue hating cultural outsiders, all while taking plenty of out-of-state donations themselves every time they face genuine forceful criticism for those they answer to. No, you don't have to be from the dreaded California to have a major problem with the direction we're headed under the current Texas delegation in Congress under Trump. Some regard these 4.7 Trump voters and 3.9 million Clinton voters, or the sizable Republican turnout to the Texas primaries last spring, as the latest confirmation that the state isn't shifting anytime soon, but that is not the same as an absence of a powerful progressive undercurrent. In fact, those numbers are evidence of it. Are millions of left-leaning voters in Texas somehow not real Texans? Do they not deserve leaders who consider them a meaningful part of the population? Yet, little under half of Texas is at odds with 2/3 of the representatives in the U.S. House and Texas legislature, representatives who seem not to believe that progressive Texans even exist. And a voting plurality isn't all the Texas progressives can claim. Plenty of left-leaning policies enjoy Texans' majority support. Come on. I've written articles where I've said the country is really a progressive country. Check this out. 64% of Texans want Medicaid expansion, and 54% said the federal government should ensure all Americans have health care coverage. 55% of Texans polled by the Texas Medical Center support a Medicare for all approach to health insurance. It is worth remembering that Medicare and Medicaid were championed and finally signed into law by a president from Texas. 51% of Texans think gun control laws should be more strict, and 53% said the insufficient gun control is at least partly to blame for school shootings. 57% oppose family separations at the border, and throngs stepped forward throughout the state to keep families together to protest this summer. Think about that. It's not all that conservative, eh? These are not the views of the interlopers out of touch with their neighbors, but of Texans looking out for their neighbors. The imperative that we take care of each other was, after all, the message of Houston Strong after Harvey. These are not the views of a horde of invaders who all just got here, but people invested enough in the communities to want to actually invest in them. The belief that we are fundamentally beholden to one another is held by Texans who lived here for generations, as well as by immigrants. These values too are Texas. Variety and breadth of landscape and perspective is as Texas as it gets. Statewide electeds would understand all of this if they just listened to us, but they don't. The best shot a Texas constituent has at an interaction with a Republican member of Congress these days is usually a strip curb outside an unoccupied office or closed door meeting masquerading as an open conversation in place of a town hall open to all constituents. You know why? Because when people show up, they realize Texas is not the conservative state they thought it was. Even the real town halls don't seem to get our concerns across. At Representative John Culberson Town Hall in March 2017, an auditorium of the most engaged, ID-proven resident of District 7 made known their resounding support of the Affordable Care Act and their desire to improve the law rather than trash it, only to see Culberson turn around and vote to repeal a month and a half later, then vote to strike the individual mandate and weaken protections for pre-existing conditions as part of the tax bill later the same year in kind. Texas's Ken Paxton leads the charge among attorneys general currently suing to end those protections. Yes, that's what they do. Or maybe our representatives would catch on to the blue diversity of viewpoints among us if Texas weren't dead last in the nation on eligible voter turnout. That is what makes Texas conservative. The progressives don't vote. Yes, it's true that they make it difficult in a lot of places for us to vote, but it is our fault. It doesn't have to be that way. We can make sure and vote. We can vote if we really wanted to vote. And that is what we need to do. Anyhow, let's see, or maybe our representatives would catch on to the true diversity of viewpoints among U.S. if Texas weren't dead last in the nation's eligible voters. If our voting laws were less restrictive, and if our congressional districts were anywhere close to be fairly drawn, it would be a different story altogether. The gap between our representatives and the state's actual population has only widened as the nation's minority party entrenches itself in Texas and in Washington. The conservative Texas caricature and Texans half earnest, half in on the joke embrace of it is not only a disservice to the true character of a complex majority-minority region, it's a hole in our armor, a cowboy costume that's easy to put on, is easy to exploit. Just look at 2016. The webpage that of one group. Let me back up. Let me say that right. The webpage was that of a group called Heart of Texas. Its content was so pro-secession, hard right, rabidly white nationalists and nativists, rarely accurate, and all about how great Texas is. It was also one of numerous social media accounts run by Russians to interfere with U.S. politics. The page reeled in 250,000 followers by stoking prejudice wrapped in a Texas flag and blue bonnets. It proceeded to orchestrate a real-life armed rally at a mosque in downtown Houston. So there was a fake account with a whole lot of messaging that actually got a rally put together from Russia because they imitated who Texans are. And you know, you put that cowboy on and your boots on and the cowboy hat and the spurs and the blue bonnet, and you got a Texan, right? No, you don't. Anyhow, that's what they did. Anyhow, while conservative Texas lawmakers are in fact real people, there's a similar show being put on, and the frontier gear is wearing thin. As Ted Cruz said, increasingly weird cultural signals about Whataburger and tofu in order to demonstrate he's the most Texan in his race against Beto. We can cringe but also take heart. What an impoverished idea of what Texas is about. Is that all they've got? There are no ideological requirements for being a real Texan, and that's why the real Texas is big enough for all of us and good enough to grow to something even better. And that is where we're going to be going, something really better. Okay, I think it's time for me to go ahead and check to see if I have some messages, and I am so sorry for the echo problem that we had before. For some reason, that's a difficult problem with this particular broadcast software that we've been fighting for some time, and we thought we had it licked, but evidently we don't. Anyhow, let's see what we've got here to answer from folks. Let's see. Bear with me 1 second as I pull that up. Let me go ahead and pull. Oh, is that the right thing? Yeah. Okay, we have our comments now. Let's see. Guess Mike has echo. Sorry about that, my friends. I asked for help on that. Michael Rudnin, what good is insurance if no doctors accept it? You're absolutely right. It's absolutely no good if no doctor accepts it. Michael, your sound is fixed. Guess still has echo. Interesting. Okay. A non-voting state, yeah, Texas is dead last in voter turnout. Getting people who don't vote to the polls is the strategy that progressives need to focus on, mostly by showing people that we represent them, not the moneyed interest. That is prescient, and that is something that we have to put out there, my friend. We have to let folks know that finally, look, you're not just voting for a Republican light. You're voting for people who are going to go out there to Washington and do the job that you want and need done for you. Bob Brown, is a problem on your end or ours? Bob Brown, I think the problem in that, I'm not hearing it on the call line in Dan's office. That is correct. What happens is there is an issue apparently with Facebook Live's interface to Wirecast, which is a system that we're using, but we'll try to clean that up. Bob Brown, I'm watching on the V Live. Okay, got it. Okay, got it. All right, let's see what else we have here. We have payday lenders have huge interest rates that I would say they are straight up robbing their clients, which is what they do. That is absolutely what they do. They rob their clients because, you know, when you start to add up the interest rates that it turns out to be, because they call it fees and all of that, a lot of times it's 200-300%. It makes absolutely no sense, but people do it. The people at least can afford it. Large number of people moved to Texas because of the conservative policies, not regressive leftist policies. Oh, Mike Cisak, I love the way you say that, right? The truth of the matter is they don't move to Texas to be a part of the 1 million people that are uninsured. How do you solve that? They don't move to Texas because we have a lot of places that can be called Cancer Alley because of the poor enforcement of the poor environmental laws we have. They don't move to Texas. Yeah, they may move to Texas because they can get a very cheap house. But why get a very cheap house in a place like some parts of Pasadena where there's benzene and all of that let go into the environment and kills you? And, you know, what people don't understand a whole lot of times is they say, oh, well, things are a lot cheaper in Texas. Okay, yeah. So you get a cheaper house. But if later on you're going to get sick and then end up with $1 million healthcare bill and no insurance, what's the point? You know, so people have to understand this. You pay me now or pay me later. Look at what's happening to the school systems in Texas. One of the reasons we have lower taxes than, let's say, in the Northeast is the amount of money we invest in our schools. Now, you don't see that degradation in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. It takes 10 to 12 years to see what that can do to a state. And what it does to a state really is it keeps the native state, the native folks who were born in that state, they hurt because their educational system was lousy. So their pre-K, K, and K-12 aren't good. And what has to happen then is the corporations that stay in Texas for cheap, because of not paying a lot of taxes or whatever, they then import people into Texas. So what you have is the original Texans who got a poor education, not able to get the type of jobs because they're not educated for the jobs. And then we bring more people into Texas, the ones who some other state has educated, and say, okay, come to Texas. We'll pay you well, and it's cheap to live here. So in effect, what we're doing is we are a welfare state as we ask other states to pay for the education of their citizens. Then we import those citizens into this state because since we don't collect a whole lot of taxes, it's cheaper to live here. CSAC, you can't do it your way. It just doesn't work. It'll work temporarily for Texas because we are skimping off of the labor and taxes of other states. And that's why we can bring other people into this state. The other states educate them. Other states make them intelligent. And then we bring them here. That is how it works. Regressive, let's see what else you have to say, my friend. Regressive as in policies that have been tried for nearly 400 years and still fail. Oh, you buy all that Heritage Foundation crap, huh? Not true. Bartering, even societies who bartered have done well. I had a discussion with a man yesterday that he said, well, you know, if we do certain things your way, Egberto, certain things will be more inefficient. And I'm like, okay, so certain things are more inefficient, but it gives people a better life. Which one do you want? Better life or inefficiency? Better life or inefficiency? Give me inefficiency. But there are certain things that are very much more efficient. Medicare for all, a lot more efficient, mathematically absolute statement than the current system that we have. I have to go to my little thing here and ask to tell you folks, remember this is a progressive show and what we need from you is support. So we ask you to please go ahead and go to Politics Done Right. All right, go to patreon.com/politics done right. That is patreon.com/politics done right. Become a member of this particular station, and understand that that is the only way we are going to get the progressive message out. The way we get the progressive message out is to ensure that we're funded. On the 17th, I head to Washington, D.C. to another conference called the Bridge Alliance, where we're trying to get a whole lot of people together for a common cause and making sure that we can continue the political work that we're doing. But we need you. We need your help to defray not only the cost of these items, but all over the place. So please go to patreon.com/politics done right. That's patreon.com/politics done right. Anyhow, folks, we are going to be we're back on Monday. We have a treat for you. We should have Daniel Cohen, president of Indivisible. He's going to talk. Well, he'll be talking in probably not with the Indivisible hat on, but the activist, progressive democratic activist hat on. He's going to have a whole lot to say about block walking and how efficient it is, and knowing your district, especially if you are a precinct chair or helping a precinct chair. So get prepared for Monday. He's a very entertaining character, and he's a very go-getter millennial that's going to be part of leading us out of this morass that we're in right now. So, folks, again, please go ahead and go to patreon.com, patreon.com/politics done right. Now, as you know, today, there was an interesting play where one of the senators, I don't remember his name right now, Flake decided to make a deal with his own guys. In other words, he tell them he'll vote yes to put Kavanaugh through if they promise to have some sort of a federal FBI investigation. Interesting enough, I think Flake temporarily got played, but a couple of other senators came on. So it seems like we're going to have a delay of about a week. So folks who know all the dirt, who know all the evil that's been done by Kavanaugh, this is your chance to put it out there, and you can't hide. This is a lifetime position, folks. So if you know the bad things that this guy has done, it is time for the rest of the world to know so, because I tell you what, absent that, ¿qué pasó? It's all over, folks. We're coming to the end of the show. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this, baby. I am, you know what? I am out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.